We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live, Boxing Ego Unpack. Yeah. We unpack. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live. And just like that, it is over. Canceled. His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh has just made it official that he's moving on. He's no longer interested in a potential fight between Terence Crawford and Canelo Payday. You want Payday? I know that. Alvarez. This just happened. So I'm going to give you guys my thoughts. We'll go over everything, what was said, and then I'll give you the ego thoughts. So let's jump right into the mix. Turki Al-Sheikh. This is his page. I follow him, and I noticed a recent message, right? And he says, and I quote, "Just wrapped up an important meeting now with my team, planning for the upcoming fights that we will make for 2024 through next year, 2025. I decided to disregard the Canelo fight." Boom, you see right there. You never know. Boom. He says, "I decided to disregard the Canelo fight as I don't want it anymore. Instead, I will be focusing for the U.S. market with bigger fights." I mean, I don't know what's bigger than that, but again, we'll save that for the ego thoughts, especially for the legend Terence Crawford. Additionally, I will support making fights for Boots, Jaron Ennis, Devin Haney, Shakur Stevenson, Ortiz, I'm assuming that's Virgil Ortiz, Jared Big Baby Anderson, David Benavidez, William Zepeda, and more. This part was kind of weird too. He says, regarding Tim Tszyu, there's something unclear with the communications from his team with our team, so I believe I will reconsider his situation. So I don't know what that means. And for the rest of the world, definitely I am focusing on Riyadh season card, Wembley edition on the 21st of September, Anthony Joshua versus Daniel Dubois. And depending on the results and the results of Riyadh season's opening card with the undisputed fight, Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev on the 12th of October, I will build the card for the rematch of Tyson Fury versus Usyk on the 22nd or 21st of December, and another big card the first quarter of 2025. Stay tuned. Right? So that all the rest of it sounds all in well. And I don't have any real comment on that. You know, Fury Usyk, the first fight was really good, and they had a rematch clause, so I understand the rematch happening. Of course, undisputed with Bivol and Beterbiev, been wanting to see that fight. Great fight. I'm not mad at Joshua Dubois, so the rest of it sounds good. As far as his 2025 calendar and Riyadh season, I don't even know what it consists of, so I have no comment on that. But I wanted to focus on what he said about Terence Crawford. Y'all must have forgot. Okay, so again, before I give my thoughts, he says, he said he had a meeting, and he said, I decided to disregard the Canelo fight as I don't want it anymore. That statement alone, a little bit weird, because he says, I don't want it anymore. You know, like almost as if he was the one fighting, you know, like Crawford and Canelo don't have a say in it. But then again, if you are supplying the money, then I guess your opinion in that regard does matter if you're fronting the bill, you know, and you're putting up your own cash to make stuff happen. So it is what it is. He said, instead, I'll be focusing on the U.S. market with bigger fights, especially for the legend Terence Crawford. Now, he seems sold on Terence Crawford. I've said it. Terence Crawford's a great fighter, hasn't always made the right business decision, but you have His Excellency who's really trying to double down and make Crawford into, more of a household name. Again, I'm going to say it again. Terence Crawford, great fighter. At age 37, he will be 37 in September next month. It is going to be extremely hard. You could put all the money in the world and put it on Crawford, but with his personality, with the trajectory, with the lack of kind of momentum, it's going to be hard to accomplish what I think they're trying to accomplish with Terence Crawford. I really believe that. You guys can believe, people always get mad at my opinion. This is my channel and it's my opinion. I'm not insulting the man's skill, but you fought Errol Spence Jr. The world was paying attention to the fight. PBC did an amazing job with the fight. Everybody liked the Eminem ring walk. You came out with B-Rabbit. You've been working at this plant so long, you were plant. Look at this guy's boots. They're starting to grow roots. You can't get with me spitting this wickedly, lickety shy, the liquor shy, the split lickety, right? Everything just worked out perfectly for Terence Crawford. From the ring outfit, Errol Spence is the big fish. You came out with the garments and, the fish hunting season or whatever with the fish net, to catch the fish. All of that made sense. They tried to reduplicate the magic with this particular Crawford Madrimov, and it did not work. I think they put a lot of money in. First of all, Terence Crawford walked out looking like Captain Crunch. He had some kind of like Admiral type of Purple Hearts. It did not have the same allure because, one, your opponent, people wanted to see you fight Errol, and it was a brand that people knew. Like I told you with Madrimov, he just wasn't a household name. A lot of people in boxing didn't even know Madrimov. And again, they could put all the money that they won on Crawford. We'll see how it plays out. But I know for a fact it wasn't sold out. There are people that were there, like boxing reporter Sean Zettel. He has a whole video out where he recapped it, and he was live in direct. And he says it wasn't sold out. And I know other people that went, et cetera, et cetera. So please don't do that. They said, Turki said that Crawford's a mega star, and I'm going to get him all these fights, and we're going to get bigger fights. I mean, what's a bigger fight than the Canelo fight for him? And it's ironic because Crawford's team has been rather dismissive of Jaron Boots Ennis, and there's really no obstacle. Eddie Hearn says he wants that fight for Boots. Boots and Bozy Ennis, his father and trainer, said they want the fight. The only resistance has come from Team Crawford and his fans, the Bud Buddies. They're saying Boots brings nothing to the table, etc. And I put out this tweet the other day. If you feel Boots hasn't fought anyone, fine. But what about Israel Madrimov? He has literally a fraction of the fights, and he hadn't fought no big names. And you're like, oh, but he's a champion. Boots is a champion. You're like, oh, but Boots got his belt through the email. I'm 18 steps ahead of you. You say Boots is the email champ. That's because Crawford became undisputed, and he was the mandatory for Crawford, and the fight didn't happen. So the IBF stripped Crawford, and he was relinquished and relieved of his belt. So, I mean, Boots didn't get his opportunity. So you can't be mad at that. Meanwhile, Israel Madrimov just became a champion in March 8th, through a vacancy left by Jermell Charlo. So it's not much different than the email. You didn't fight a champion to become a champion. So yeah, Crawford's a 4-division champion, but I firmly believe that context matters, especially in the sport of boxing. Like, for example, you could be like, Canelo Alvarez knocked out Carlos Baldomir, something Floyd Mayweather didn't do, and something Zab Judah didn't do, right? Sounds good, but the reality is when Zab Judah and Floyd were fighting Carlos Baldomir, he was a champion caliber fighter, and he was more so in his prime. Canelo fought him on the way up because he's from a different generation than Zab and Floyd, and he fought him many moons later when Baldomir was obviously doing things that later led to his arrest. And he was like 40, 41 years old, right? So context actually matters. You can't just put that out there like, oh, but Canelo slept him. Yes, he did sleep him, but you got to look at who he was when each person fought him. And it's no different with the Madrimov fight. Madrimov, he did his thing, you know. He held his own. He didn't embarrass himself, but that was his first. The Crawford fight was really his first elite name, you know, where we know the person and we respect the person you're in the ring with. And he held his own considering his lack of pro experience. Now, as far as Turki, he says he just wrapped up the meeting and now he's changed his mind and decided to disregard the Canelo fight. I think that's a bit weird. One, again, I get it. If you're in charge of the money, you could do whatever you want. But what brought this out? Because Canelo just did a press conference for his fight with Edgar Berlanga, his upcoming fight, and he's done interviews. And I know some people, they're going to try to correct me as if I'm not the best in the business, and it's not even close. Like, I don't know what's going on in the sport of boxing. People are going to say, oh, Canelo said he wanted $150 million. Again, like I just said in this video, context matters. For one, Canelo was in a media scrum. A reporter asked him some questions. They said like, oh, His Excellency wants to offer you the Crawford fight, yada, yada, yada. What do you think? Canelo says, if the money is right, this is what he said. And then the reporter said something like, and he threw a number out and he said something like 100 mil. Canelo says 150. And then he walked away. So I don't know what that was. You know what I mean? You got a lot of people who try to act brain dead. I don't know if he was trolling. I don't know if if you actually sat with him and try to negotiate the fight, I don't know if he'd be stuck on this 150 mil number. Now, when he's talking about David Benavidez, the reason why I believe that he wants that type of money is because he keeps saying it. He keeps saying, give me 200 mil to fight David Benavidez. He's literally saying that. But the context in which he said it about Crawford, about the 150, first of all, you have a reporter who's throwing out a number, and that's like leading the interviewee, right? He's the one that said 100 mil, to which Canelo replied, 150. So I don't know if he's being facetious. I don't know if he meant that. It's not really as what people are making it out. Some people are like, oh, why do you want 150 million to fight a welterweight? He literally was questioned by a reporter. The person threw out a number of 100 mil. He said, no, how about 150? And walked away. So I'm not going to make a big deal about that in terms of what he said with Crawford, because first of all, boxing deals are not dealt with and done via social media. A person can say whatever they want via social media or an interview. It is up to the organizers, the advisors and the promoters and the networks or whatever, to get the teams at the table, cutting room floor, behind the scenes, with no cameras rolling, and discuss the particulars. That's why they call it a negotiation. When they say like Gervonta Davis and Team Lomachenko are in negotiations, you're trying to negotiate a deal. So to me, it's a rather weird that His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh is saying all of a sudden, I don't know why, but he's saying, nah, I don't want the Canelo fight. I'm going to disregard that fight. Based on what? Because even if your argument is, oh, Canelo said 150 mil in a video in passing, which I already explained to you, even if that's your stance, you got to negotiate. Who knows if he was serious about that? Who knows if he can come down from that number? But just to dead it and end it and say like, yo, I'm moving on. To me, I feel like there's other things that are at play. And for me, I feel like it's a bad look because Crawford has been calling out Canelo Alvarez, and he at first, see, and this is what I told you about Terence Bud Crawford. Initially, Crawford was calling out Canelo, and then he was doing I think it was on the Breakfast Club. Don't quote me on that. I'm talking about last year after he beat Errol Spence. He was calling out Canelo, and he said he'll fight him at a catchweight, right? Then the fans were giving him pushback, like, no, Canelo's the A-side. Why would he come down and fight you at a catchweight? Plus, Canelo Alvarez did interviews when asked about Crawford, and he said, I can't make 160 no more. So I'm not doing 160, and I'm not doing the catchweight because, 168 is my division. I'm undisputed. Then Terence Crawford changed it, and he changed totally what he was saying. And please, it's the kid with the golden voice, the best in the business, and it's not even close. I can prove this, and don't make me make a follow-up video if you want to doubt what I'm saying. But you could really do your own research and find this. Crawford was initially saying that he would fight Canelo, but not at 168. He was saying either at a catchweight or 160, kind of meet in the middle. Canelo ex-nayed that, said no, like Destiny's Child. He said it has to be at 168. He can come up if you want to fight me. I'm Canelo, right? And then in more recent interviews, pre-Madrimov, Crawford starts saying he'll go up to 168 and he'll take the fight with Canelo at 168. Now, all of a sudden, he fights Madrimov. People feel that he looked less like Superman and he looked more human at 154. And days later, the guy that's backing him, Turki, is saying that they're out of the Canelo Crawford business. They're moving on. So to me, I think this was initially something they were drawing up, but given how Crawford looked versus Madrimov, and it's not like he looked horrible, but reality kicked in, which I've been warning you guys about, that weight classes exist for a reason. If Crawford and Canelo were both at the same division, maybe. Like if they were both, but it doesn't always work like that. Just like some people, they question like, oh, Gervonta Davis versus Inoue. The fight probably won't happen unless Inoue wants to come up to 135, and I doubt it. Who wants to come up to 135 from much lighter divisions to fight a guy like Tank with that type of power? So it's probably not a realistic fight. That's what this Crawford fight was, right? They're not at the same weight class. And I feel so vindicated. I feel so good because it just shows you how good I am at my job and how thorough that despite all the backlash and all the negative comments like, oh, Crawford, he'll whoop Canelo and you hating ego and I want to see it. Now reality is set in, and I think people seen that Madrimov fight. I strongly believe this. I think people seen the Madrimov fight and they're like, yo, Crawford's sharp, nice combination punches, great body attack, but 154 for real might be his ceiling. And 168 is looking like a bridge too far. And now the same people that were pushing for the Canelo fight between His Excellency Turki and Canelo, all of a sudden, they don't seem as interested in the Canelo fight miraculously after the Madrimov fight. And I think that is part of the reason. I don't think it's this, oh, Canelo wants too much money, because Canelo did at the Edgar Berlanga press conference in New York, he said that he's never even received an offer from His Excellency, right? So Turki said during an interview for Crawford Madrimov that he sent Canelo an offer and Canelo should take it. That's what he said. And then days later, he said he had a meeting, and now he's saying, don't take it. We're no longer interested in the Canelo fight, but we're going to provide some alleged bigger fight for Crawford. So everything I said, it checks out. Canelo Crawford was always a pipe dream. Based on the variance of weights, it didn't make sense. And now I think the world is seeing it and finally catching up to boxing ego time. That's what I truly think it is. I think the reality check is Crawford's 37. He's already moved up 4 weight classes, and Canelo is just too big. Because here's the thing. Canelo has 2 fights at 175. He has multiple fights, and even the stoppage of a guy like Caleb Plant at 168. He dropped and hurt Munguia at 168, who definitely is tough. He's durable. I mean, does anyone believe Crawford would move up and have a better chin than Jaime Munguia at 168? When we've seen Crawford hurt by Gamboa, who really wasn't a career 135 pounder, right? And Munguia is like 6 feet tall and just tough and durable. You see what I'm saying? So I think that's more so the reason than Canelo, his number. Because again, if you were so concerned about the number, you would still have a negotiations to see if you can move someone off of that number or, you know, find a middle ground. But it's not clearly headed in that direction when Turki is saying, I retract my offer, and we're not even, you know, I'm disregarding the Canelo fight. I think, like I said, put it this way. If Crawford, ask yourself this question, and please put in the comment section what you believe. We unpacked. If Terence Crawford knocked out Madrimov, I think the conversations would still be pushing towards the Canelo fight, or at least trying to negotiate with Canelo. That's what I truly believe. Like I said from day one, immediately after the fight, this was a reality check, which is what I've been telling you. Weight classes in boxing exist for a reason. This isn't a video game. And then Crawford, in his post-fight interview, he said multiple times how strong Madrimov was, how strong he was. So we may never get the full scoop and the full truth because a lot of people, they're not going to be transparent in front of cameras, right? But you can read between the lines. He was praising Madrimov a good share and saying he was strong. If you think that this man, Madrimov, is strong at 154, then what is Canelo at 168 when he fought Billy Joe Saunders, who was undefeated and dang near broke his orbital with a singular shot? I think that His Excellency and Team Crawford got the reality check. They were pushing for the fight, and now it's looking like the Canelo, he would just be too big. He would just be too big for Terence Crawford. And I even told you guys, I've been right when it comes to this situation. If you don't think I'm right, make the fight. I've been saying the same thing. Crawford, the more realistic fight for him in terms of a big fight would be Boots. There's really no obstructions. Like I said, Eddie Hearn wants it. You're both with DAZN. Your last fights were with DAZN. Riyadh season, Turki just told you that he wants to work with Boots. Terence Crawford, you know, he's a switch hitter. Boots is a great fighter and a switch hitter. But Terence Crawford's team just keeps saying that Jaron Ennis ain't ready or there's no gain in this lose-lose situation. But then you can fight Madrimov. You can fight a guy with 11 losses, or excuse me, 11 fights, but a bigger fight, which we know in American boxing, a fight with Boots will be much bigger. Boots did a very good, respectable live gate at home in Philly. I don't understand why people try to play these games like Madrimov was a household name. No shade to the guy, he could fight. You know, he's a solid fighter. But we're talking about running a business. We're talking about pleasing the fans and giving the fans what they want. And I've been telling you, Crawford versus Boots. Crawford versus Boots. People keep bringing up, oh, you seen what happened to Arrow. Errol and Boots aren't the same fighter. Boots didn't go through a car wreck. Completely different stories, different attributes, different, temperaments. Errol had been at welterweight for a long time. Boots is younger, so his body's still forgiving where he can make the weight. I'm telling you. And I'm curious. I really can't wait because Crawford said he would run it back with Madrimov. Who wants to see that, though? You know what I mean? So His Excellency in his post, he says, I will be focusing for U.S. market with bigger fights. I don't understand what is the bigger fight that's realistic for Terence Crawford at this space of his career if you're not going to fight Canelo Alvarez. But Canelo would probably be the biggest. Not that I ever liked the fight, but it would have been the biggest just because of who Canelo is. And, Crawford has his name and his brand. So it would have been big for that. But they've just told you that they're not interested in anymore and they're moving on, which, again, I find weird because Turki just said on Saturday that they sent Canelo an offer. Canelo denies the offer. And the day he does the Edgar Berlanga press conference where he says, if the money is right, I will fight him, instead of taking that and then trying to get in touch with his team, say, hey, if you beat Berlanga, here's what we got for you, blah, 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 hash out the numbers, see if he's stuck on an unrealistic number, whatever, try to make the Canelo. But they just said, no, we're not worried about it. And this is the fight that Canelo, he already told you. He said, if the money's right. And the other thing I want to talk about is I think one of the major issues is fighters who haven't made the money that Floyd Mayweather or Canelo Alvarez, guys like that have made. They're going to be willing to do, if you look at any superstar in combat sports, right? Conor McGregor, he's making so much money with all of his businesses. He has Mayweather money he probably hasn't spent, right? He has Proper 12. I don't know what you're thinking, right? He's made a bag before. He's probably made retail or real estate investments and stuff, right? So that being said, when you got these cash cow type fighters, the Conor McGregors, the Floyds, the Canelo, they're not going to be dictated to. Now, when you're talking about other UFC fighters, they never made a fraction of what Conor McGregor has made. So, yeah, I'm sure they would do a whole lot for not that much money. But when you enter the stratosphere of a guy like Canelo, who we know he could fight Berlanga and he's probably making 40, 50 mil. He can fight against Munguia and he's getting 35, 45 mil or whatever he's getting, right? He can fight Triple G3 and he probably made more than that. Plus he has deals where in Mexico, he has like Box Azteca where he gets probably points or percentages on the viewership out there. And he has companies, right? So I think one of the other major issues here is Riyadh season. They're throwing their money around and like buying fighters and putting fighters on the card. And a person like Canelo is not going to be dictated to because he's made a lot of money. And the same goes for Gervonta Davis. Remember when Gervonta Davis, I think it was said that Turki Al-Sheikh wanted to make the fight with Devin Haney and Gervonta Davis, right? And Gervonta responded with, just to negotiate with me, you need to send me 2 Ferraris, right? You need to send me 2 Ferraris. To which Turki said, I'm not sending 2 Ferraris. I'll only send 2 boxing gloves. And then we haven't heard about them trying to make that fight ever since. Same goes with Canelo. So you see what I'm saying? You see these PBC superstar fighters, face of boxing type of fighters like Gervonta Davis and Canelo. They beat to the sound of their own drum and they're making great money. They got their team like kind of already set. And I ultimately think they're not going to be dictated to, because they don't have to. They don't have to do what someone else says, especially a guy like Canelo Alvarez. Again, Canelo, he makes money. He makes a lot of money. He has a cell phone company. I think he has a hydration drink. You know, Canelo got some quiet money and different things going on. He was in the movie Creed, the third one. You know what I mean? So I didn't even understand this. Like, you can't just throw money at Canelo and not make it make sense. Crawford, he needs to work with whoever's going to overpay him, because he's not a huge star. He's a great fighter, but he's not a huge star. Canelo, he can fight a Berlanga and make 40, 50 mil. So it's different. Crawford can't fight certain people or like a Yildirim and get that type of money. You know what I mean? He can't fight a Yildirim caliber person. But Canelo has, and Canelo's been doing whatever he wants for real. And I think that's a major difference. And potentially another obstacle is the fact that Canelo, I'm not going to work on your terms. Like, it's my terms. And people bugging out about Canelo saying, give me 150 mil and stuff like that. But he already explained to you. He says, to fight Terence Crawford, nobody will give me credit anyway, because he's a former welterweight, came from lightweight, 140, 135. So I'm not going to get credit. So if Canelo's trying to tax and he wants an absorbent amount of money, or what you think is too big of a purse, you got to pay like you weigh. He probably trying to sweeten the deal. Like, if you want me to fight a fight with Terence Crawford where I don't really have an upside, if I beat him, they'll just say he was too small and I was picking on someone small, then pay me. And that's all Canelo said. He said, if the money is right, we got to fight. And it's funny because that's the same thing Crawford said in his post-fight with Chris Mannix on DAZN when he was asked about fighting Canelo. He said, if the money's right, he has a fight. So why is it any different when the A side in that equation, Canelo Alvarez, is saying it? And again, as far as 150 mil, maybe he was serious, maybe he wasn't. I don't know, because I'm not Canelo Alvarez, but I do know there's been a lot of people who have demanded whatever they demanded. Nicholas Walters, when he was in negotiations to fight Lomachenko, he demanded a lot of money, didn't get it, and then they renegotiated later on, and then he took a lot less money. So you never know how that will play out until you get in negotiation and work on the number. But to just abandon it when Turki literally said on Saturday at Crawford Madrimov that they want to make this fight and Canelo should take it, and then now he's saying, scrap that. I had a meeting. We just wrapped up a meeting. Now we don't want this fight. I don't know. I feel like something's up. And for me, that something is Terence Crawford having a tougher than expected fight with Israel Madrimov was the reality check that move and that fight just doesn't make much sense. So hopefully they go back to the drawing board and we can get a fight with Terence Crawford and Jaron Ennis. But I'll be honest, I'm not really faithful and hopeful that fight can happen based on what I'm hearing from Crawford, because Crawford and his team, they just keep fronting in little boy in boots saying he hasn't fought no one, but then they can fight an 11-fight Madrimov, no questions asked. But then when it comes to Boots, which and I know that it would be a bigger fight just because Boots is developing and he's like kind of an urban legend in the game right now. Just one of those ones. Like, there's a couple guys right now that are like guys to watch and people are watching and checking, and Boots has a nice following for, given the fact that he hasn't fought big names at this point of his career. He has a lot of people who are like checking for him and following the journey at this point. So I don't want to really hear Team Crawford say, oh, Boots just ain't ready. Okay, so David Avocado was ready. Like, what are we talking about, bro? I know for a fact I am the best in the business, and it's not even close. What are we talking about? And see, and that's the problem with the Bud Buddies. Crawford will fight opposition that no one really requested, like Madrimov with 11 fights or David Avocado. That's 2 of his last 3 fights. 2 of his last 3 fights. You can fight on BLT Prime or whatever against David Amnesia, a fight literally no one wanted, no one asked for, no one thought Amnesia could win, right? And no qualms, no beefs, no quarrels. Somehow you crunched the numbers and you made that a reality, and the fight happened in December. But you can't bring yourself to fight Jaron Boots Ennis, who we know for a fact would just be a bigger fight and a bigger deal, and boxing heads and probably casuals alike would be excited for. It's mind-boggling. And it just shows me that these are fans of singular fighters more so than fans of boxing. Because as I've always stated, Canelo should be fighting Benavidez and Crawford should be fighting Boots. There's not many other fights left for Terence Crawford that even inspire a conversation. Like, if the competition looks like the people he fought on Top Rank, a lot of them, where there were really no chance, like John Molina, really no chance that that person was going to beat Crawford. At this stage of his career, he's just going to be getting overpaid, and it's going to be events that are the kind of lackluster. They literally pulled out all the stops with the Madrimov fight, and they put a loaded card with a ton of names, and it still didn't pop. It still didn't sell out for real. It still didn't have boxing craving more. I mean, literally, one of the only fights that people are even talking about from that card is Bacoli and Anderson, and Rayo did a good job boxing Pitbull. So the thing is, if you have Crawford headlining, like you had him headlining LA, if you remove Andy Ruiz, Mexican-American, Pitbull and Rayo, what would that card do? Because I think a lot of, I believe their bouts aided in the amount of some of the people even turning up, because you had this star-studded undercard. And Crawford, he's not dynamic enough outside of the ring, or hasn't connected or resonated to the point where I guess the audience is finding him relatable. So again, we'll see. Because when I say this, you guys say I'm hating. I can't wait till that live gate comes out. I am going to make a video the day the live gate comes out, and I can't wait. I cannot wait, because you guys, we live in a society now that's soft. If I speak the truth, they'll say I'm hating. They won't address what I said. They won't rebuttal and respond to the points that I've made. They'll just say it's hate. But the proof is in the pudding. You can try as you may. So far, Crawford has not shown to be this budding star, and no pun intended, bud, you get it? Whatever. And he's 37. So it's going to be extremely hard to do that, because I feel like most people, the switch in boxing has been flipped. Like Pacquiao got cracking before he was 37 years old. I know that for a fact. When Mayweather was 37, he was fighting Canelo. So we already know he was popping well before the Canelo fight. He was already Money Mayweather fighting Ricky Hattons and Shane Mosley, Cotto. All those fights had already happened. The Maidana fights, right? The earlier in his career stuff, Pretty Boy Floyd stuff, Chico and Gotti. Those fights have already happened. They're literally trying to put their eggs in the Crawford basket at age 37. And like, what big fight can you really provide them that really makes sense? To me, I guess it would have to be, if it's not going to be Canelo, Boots, maybe Jermell Charlo. But I think Jermell Charlo, I think people want to see him back in the ring first because he lost in the Canelo fight and he lost in that fashion. So they just want to make sure he can drop back down in weight and probably need maybe even a tune-up or two to make sure he's the same Lions only that fought Castano. So for whatever reason, the offer has been rescinded from Turkey, and now we can stop talking about Crawford versus Canelo, which is what I told you. The fight made no sense, and I think the Madrimov fight is a big reason why the world is finally catching up to Boxing Ego and saying the fight doesn't make sense. We unpacked.